Hey Hebrew fans, this is Todd. Today we're going to work on making a visor for Vykron. So Vykron normally comes with his helmet, which is open in the front so you can see his eyes and nose and mouth. And so to do this, we're going to first make a neck peg holder basically for the head. So you're going to need some O-rings and a flat washer. And then of course we're going to clean those parts before you put them together because we're going to super glue these parts together. Use some alcohol and then put the parts on a towel of some sort, some washcloth or some wash rag. Pour the alcohol on them. Make sure you get enough alcohol on them. And then scrub them really well. Now, you got to make sure you also do a dry wipe on these. So put them on a dry spot on the towel. And then also dry them off really well. And continue scrubbing until they're completely clean. Want to make sure there's no residue left over on there and there's no oils from when they manufactured it. So they should stick pretty good with super glue once you get them completely dry, and you'll feel they'll feel like they're more sticky even before you even start to put them together. Alright, so now glue those parts together. You want 2 O-rings on the bottom of the washer and 1 on the top. The 2 on the bottom will actually interface with the neck peg, and the 1 on top will go into the insert or the hole inside the helmet. Just use a little bit of glue first, just to tack it together. Apply a lot of pressure so the glue actually holds the parts together. So squeeze them good and tight. And that's how it should look. 2 on one side, 1 on the other. Now we're going to add glue into all the seams all the way around. This will help secure it and keep it strong for when you're pulling it in and off of the neck peg. If you don't do this, you'll find the O-rings will separate. You only have to do the 2 O-rings that are going to interface with the neck peg. You don't have to do the other side. I find if you use a Q-tip, clean out the inside, make sure there's no glue in there. And the Q-tip will also cause the glue to dry instantly. It's really a cool trick and it works really well. And that way you can make sure that there's no glue on the inside so you don't accidentally glue it to the neck peg or make a spot where it's not going to stick. Get it nice and clean. No glue left over on the inside that's going to cause us problems. Try to smooth out the glue you put on the outside. Again, you don't want it to be caked all over it too much, but enough on there to keep it together. Alright, here's how it should look when it's done. Again, we should have 1 on the top and 2 on the bottom. And notice the glue all around the outside edge. You can't even see the bumps anymore of the O-rings. That's just to hold it nice and tight so it doesn't come apart. Alright, let's set that aside and let's continue on. You want to get some 1-inch shrink tubing, and this will be the part that actually is the visor when we're done. So we're going to use the actual head and figure out how much shrink tubing we need, and you want to make it larger than the head. So kind of measure it out, see where that's at, and you want it larger than the face of the figure. So once you get it measured out, you're going to cut it at an angle. So you got a big section for the face and a small section for the back of his head. To do this next part, you're going to use a heat gun. Make sure you line up the seam of the heat shrink tubing with the nose. It works best to do it that way so that it has a nice pointed area where the helmet is going to be. Don't worry, that pointed area is going to actually round out. So you should look just like that before you start heating it up with the heat gun. Be careful with the heat gun. You want to actually use something like this that I made out of extra parts, and that will keep your hands away from the heat gun. Yeah, those parts are made from multi-bot. Keep readjusting as you heat it because it will fall off because it's so large. This heat shrink tubing does not have adhesive on the inside, and it's also a 1-inch heat shrink tube, and it shrinks down to as small as a 1/2 inch, so it worked just fine. The nice part is while you're heating it, it's still nice and malleable, so you can kind of play with it a lot and kind of reshape it as you need. But once it cools, it'll become very hard, and it'll actually become stiff and difficult to maneuver at that point. So you want to try to do this quickly. Keep readjusting as you need to. Remember to keep your hands out of the way. Be safe as you do this. And readjust as you need to. And you want it so it just goes barely under that part that fits into the helmet. Now I set this on a lower setting. Don't use a straight hot setting, you end up melting the figure's head as well. We want to keep the figure's head intact, so we want to use it again later. Alright, that's how it should look. You can see the impressions made by his face, and now let's take it off with a screwdriver. Be careful not to scratch the paint of the original head, because again, you want to reuse this head for other things. Be quick as you work. Our goal is to get it off as quick as we can, because as it cools, it will start to harden more and more. It likes to stick into the crevices that it is sucked into, so just use the round part of the screwdriver to try to release all those crevices. It will stretch a little bit, but that's okay. We're going to go back through later and do another small heat shrink, or another small heating on this to get rid of all the seams. So for right now, just go ahead and work your best. If you do happen to rip it or break it, it's okay. Just cut another strip and do it again. Just be careful not to damage the original head. Alright, so now it's off. You can see what it looks like. Notice that nose on the tip right there? We're going to get rid of that nose later, but for right now, let's go ahead and trim it to fit. And if you wait too long, it gets a lot harder to trim this, because the plastic will start to harden up. So you may have to carefully reheat it. Again, if you heat it too much, it will shrink. So try to do this all in one maneuver. I have noticed in the forehead section, you got to kind of cut a V in it, just because the visor slightly dips down in the middle. So just keep retesting it in the helmet, seeing how it fits, and retrim it as you need to make it fit. There's that V cut I was telling you about for the top of the helmet. And again, if you cut too much, not that big of a deal. You got lots of heat shrink tubing left. You can do it again if it didn't come out right. Alright, so now the nose. It's kind of sticking out too far. You want that to be smooth. So just barely put it over the heat gun just a little bit, just to reheat the face only. You don't want to shrink the tube anymore if you can help it. It will shrink a little, but that's okay, because right now it's still kind of a tight fit, because it was larger than the head. So just heat it up a little bit, and you'll see eventually it become nice and pliable. And once it does, you want to take your fingers and kind of mash that nose right out, and kind of mold it to the way you want it to look. Alright, here's what it looks like now. Let me show you. You can see there, the nose has been kind of pressed out of it. The V-cut's in the front. The chin goes down. Do your final trimming on it. Then any little edges that are left over, just do a real quick warm-up on it before you stick it back in the helmet. Don't warm it too much or it will shrink on you, then it won't work. This kind of just allows it to kind of form to the helmet. There we go. It's all done. Alright, now for the neck peg part. Just to make sure the glue's dry, I'm just going to heat this up. It's funny, it looks almost like I'm roasting marshmallows, doesn't it? Anyway, just warm that right up, make sure all the super glue is dry in it, because you don't want to accidentally super glue this to the figure's neck peg. Just double checking to make sure there's no wet super glue in there, and there's not. So I'm going to go ahead and slide this on his head. And now the helmet's going to fit right over the top of that top O-ring, right inside that actual little hole in there. Kind of press it on, make sure it all fits together nice. And there we go. Now, I personally like the look better when it's done with one of the Royal Guards. The green just offsets it, and it kind of gives it more of that Boba Fett look that I really like. So I switched out all the armor and put it on one of the green guards. And again, that O-ring right there, that's what seats inside the inside of that helmet and that channel. And just push it on there. Make sure it's up in there nice and tight. And there you go. A really cool looking royal pilot, if you will. Ta-da! Now, while I was playing around with this, his helmet kept falling off. So I have an update for you. I figured out a better way to do this, and that is to add another O-ring on the top. This will give you more area to fit inside the helmet. The helmet was a lot deeper, and that's how it looks once it's in there. You add the insert back in, and it will not slip off as easily. It will stay a lot tighter on the head and works a whole lot better. So, all right. Well, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next episode. Bye now.